Mhm. Welcome to the History of LA Ska one-on-one sessions. I'm your host, Junor Francis, alongside producer, my good friend, Eric Kohler. Now, this series celebrates and aims to preserve and promote ska, rocksteady, and vintage reggae scene in Southern California and beyond through insightful conversation with legends and modern-day talent, including a lot of folks who work behind the scene. So we want to say a big thank you whether you listen to the podcast series, watch on YouTube. Many thanks for your support and your participation. Just about everywhere we go this round town, we hear people saying, yeah, we are watching. So we really and truly want to thank them. Now, our guest on this latest episode is frontman, singer, musician for the Aquabats and co-creator of Yo Gabba Gabba, the MC Bat commander himself, Christian Jacobs. Big respect, sir. How's everything going?
Yes, welcome, Christian.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes, man. The background.
Yeah, very, very vibrant.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it a little colorful back here.
Yeah,
Indeed. Yeah, Christian, thanks for taking the time. I know that you're busy, but we're excited to talk to you and learn more about your background, your passion, so to speak, in Aquabats. But we're gonna let's start, if we can, by talking about something that I know is near and dear to you, and something that I watched and I've shown to my daughters, and that is talking about Yo Gabba Gabba, children's TV series that you co-created, if I'm not mistaken, with a childhood friend, Scott Schultz.
Yes.
First question, as it relates to that: will new episodes air on Apple TV, and if so, when?
That's a good question. So we haven't made official announcement yet, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying anything, but yes, we're in post-process right now of editing. We shot 20 new episodes for Apple TV, and it's looking like they'll probably air sometime in the first quarter next year. We don't actually have an official date, but technically they're supposed to announce it, and they're the ones that are supposed to lead the charge. So I'm not really supposed to say anything, but yes, we just got finished shooting. We shot for 3.5 months. Some in LA, some in Park City, Utah. Actually, there's a big film studio up there, and we did a lot of shooting up there, which was kind of crazy, but just because the weather was so wild this winter, we were used to it. So new episodes are coming, and it's I wouldn't say it's not a new, it's a reboot. So it's not Yo Gabba Gabba exactly how it was, but it's very close to the same thing. Very close.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So can you share the backstory as to how Yo Gabba Gabba was developed initially?
Sure. A lot of it stems from doing the Aquabats and having, somewhat of a successful run for a band of guys that wears like silly costumes and jumps around and fights monsters on stage. I think we were probably about as successful as we could be, especially in LA, and we had the backing of Golden Voice, and we kind of put some rumors out there that we were going to do a TV show. I think because we kind of realized that, I think for the mainstream, ska music and ska flavored stuff might have like really hit a peak with No Doubt, and like that whole thing was about as big as it's probably ever gotten, like especially in America, in the States.
Sure.
And we kind of thought, kind of being the little brothers of that scene, well, we'll have fun, but it would be really fun if we could continue doing this. And how could we continue making, this is a long story, but how could we continue being the Aquabats? How could we continue making music? And it was like, well, let's just lean into the theatricality of what we do, and let's try to make a TV show based on, the Aquabats. Like,
kind of an extension of the group.
Yeah, let's try to do a TV show. So we ended up pitching the show around, and we had a deal with Disney, and that it went a couple of years of just back and forth. And people not really understanding what we were trying to do. And this was all pre-YouTube and all that stuff, where it was, really the way you got shows made is you came up with an idea on a piece of paper and then you pitched people and said, what do you think about this? And you had to rely on people's imaginations. And like, that's never works. Yeah. So, a couple years later and Aquabats were still touring, but like popular music took a really hard shift and went into like new metal with like Limp Bizkit and Korn. It kind of went like the opposite of ska. And we had heard that like a lot of the like Midwest's radio stations were really against like the ska movement and like the third wave. We'd heard a lot of radio stations were like, no way, that stuff, we don't like it. And so they like shifted gears into like new metal because that was more like, pickup trucks and
right. Yes.
It was more raw,
Right.
so we were like, well, we're kind of out of a job and what do we do? And then that's really where we had all these ideas for an Aquabats show. And my buddy Scott, who I worked with and I've known since I was, a young teenager, and we started having kids, like our families had kids, and Scott and his wife and my wife and I, we started having kids and watching TV with our kids. And whereas the Aquabats show, we were thinking about it being like a Adult Swim or like Comedy Central, kind of like a little bit edgy humor. Now that we had kids, we were watching all these shows like The Wiggles and Barney. And
hugely successful.
Obviously like Sesame Street and stuff, but like there was kids shows, that some of them I just mentioned that I was like, I don't want my kids watching that. It's just like, it's not that cool. And the music was all just like, tack pianos and, soft acoustic guitars. I'm like, why couldn't there be ska? Why couldn't there be punk?
Yeah.
Why can't our kids listen to cool music? And then really that's where Yo Gabba Gabba came out of, was, when I'm around the house and I'm listening to music and the specials come on, or, even just like, Biz Markie or, Run DMC comes on, and my kids are like into it, but they're really little. They're like 2 years old and they're dancing. I'm like, there's power here. And that kind of power wasn't in any of the TV shows that we were watching with our kids. So that was where the light went off. Like, okay, let's make a cool new show that incorporates these sounds that I know my kids like, whether it's, the Ramones or, Madness or whatever. Let's put them all together and make a crazy show that with artists that we like on the music side, but also on the art side, like animators and guests. And we had this crazy big idea, and it definitely took a couple years to get going. I think from the time we thought of created the idea, it was like 2001 or something. And then by the time we got it actually made, it was about 2006 or so. So it was about 5 years of like trying to pitch it and get money. And then and YouTube played a big part in helping us get the show sold, because then YouTube showed up and we're like, well, let's put it up on YouTube.
Yeah. And then eventually Nickelodeon picked it up.
Yeah, right. That's right.
So at any point during that 6-year window or whatever, from idea conception to when it actually was maybe inked, how many times did you or did you ever like give up, like call it quits, like I can't do this? You lose faith, you lose motivation.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, even with the band, it was tough. Like those were tough times, dark times for the band. Having young kids, and my wife was like, really, are like, you're gonna go on the road again? Like, this is not what I signed up for. And then pitching the idea of like, sometimes you try to tell people your idea, even the people that you're close to, and they just kind of look at you like, wow, you are crazy. Like, what are you
even sometimes you feel crazy, right?
Right. Yeah. And so then I start feeling like maybe I am crazy. Maybe I should just chill out. And I did, and I worked all kinds of different jobs, 9 to 5s, and I did graveyard shift driving a forklift and I mean, did all kinds of stuff.
You did whatever,
Whatever it took. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever you got to do. But I think that's where, you know, sometimes music, rock and roll or whatever, it's kind of a young person's game, and you get naive to the fact that, like, wow, I've never had a job. I'm straight out of high school in a van and I'm on the Warped Tour. Yeah, you know, but really where the good music comes from is people that have gone through like stuff, you know, that haven't had work and don't know where they're going to eat next. And I mean, all the great reggae songs are all, you know, about their laments, that's where the blues comes. It's like the blues comes from people that are struggling to eat and like, where am I going to find my next meal? And then my girl left me, you know. It's like, that's where all the good music and the pain comes from, and inspiration comes from hard times. And so,
and heartache.
You know, the heartache of this is never going to work. But yeah, through it all, we just kept plugging away and looking for opportunities, and never forgetting the idea, just always trying to find a way, you know.
No, I love that. So it aired for 4 seasons, is that right, initially?
Yeah. So from 2007 to 2012 was our last season.
Okay.
There was like a couple year gaps in between, but like it was 4 seasons, 66 episodes, I think we did. And
wow.
So why terminated?
Yeah, that's another tricky story that it's like, I can't tell you the real reasons without like getting in trouble, like legally.
we don't want you to get in trouble. All good.
Well, you know, I don't know how much trouble I'll get in, but there's just a lot of politics that surrounded Yo Gabba Gabba, and we came into Nickelodeon as a licensed show, it means they don't own the show. So the shows that they own are the ones that they develop from the piece of paper to the cartoon or whatever, you know. And our show, we came in, we had 2 episodes already that we had shot. So all the creative was made.
Yep.
And so we came to Nickelodeon, they were like, okay, well, why don't we license your show? And you can make it, you can find someone to help you pay for it, and we'll pay a little bit of a license fee. And so it just gets tricky like that, because they don't own the show. And I think for the most part, a lot of the people at Nickelodeon thought it was just some weird show. There is like one or two or a couple executives there that really believed in it, and I love those people. But I think for the most part, maybe the business side of Nickelodeon, they just thought it was weird and like, this is not going to last.
Right.
So when the show came in and did really well and started to outperform all the shows that they owned,
Indeed.
and then it was like, wait a second, here
Right.
we
We got
on to
something on our hand.
yeah, we're licensing a show that's doing better than all of our other shows.
Okay.
That's not good. And we're not because they licensed it, we were able to keep all the revenues that come from the merchandise and the live tour. That was all us. Like, we got to keep it.
That.
Yeah, and then so basically they're paying for a commercial for our brand.
They can't have that.
And so that's really what happened. Is it just started? They started taking it off the air and putting it at weird times.
So did they give you guys a chance to work on a compromise? There's had to have been some sort of medium as opposed to drastically.
I mean, we just like taking off the gloves and telling you the truth. Like we were like, buy our show, just buy it. Like, just we'll sell it to you. Just keep it going. Like, let's just keep it going. It has so much momentum. Let's just keep going.
Sure.
And you know, they had just bought Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something for like $80 million or something like that. And they were like, no, we can't afford it right now. And so it just became one of those things where there was also power struggles at Nickelodeon between bosses and our champion, who is an amazing lady, Brown Johnson. She just was like, she was trying so hard to keep it going, but there was also a bit of a like power struggle between her and maybe some of the other people that were above her. And it was like real. Even now I'm telling you way more than
successful show.
What's that?
We're talking about a show that was successful.
Yeah, it was a successful show, and you would think they would want to keep people watching and the eyeballs, but it would, it's like, really, I think if Nickelodeon had owned Yo Gabba Gabba, it never would have gone away. It would be like SpongeBob. I mean, look at SpongeBob.
Right.
That show's been on for like 25 years or more than that. And it's still going. They're still doing seasons because why? It's so successful. And they keep putting it out there because it still does well. It still does really well. But also they also own it.
Right.
So
Exactly.
That's the big difference.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And that's hard to explain to people sometimes because
This of capitalism, how it works.
yeah, it's capitalism. It really is. It's like, hey, we discovered something that is popular, but guess what? We're not really making the money off of it.
we're not making enough off of it. Yeah. So throughout the course of Yo Gabba Gabba, when it was on, I know it must be tough for you to pinpoint.
Also, I can't blame Nickelodeon 100% too. There was issues that we had to with our own structure that just made it tricky. It was tricky, but ultimately that's what ended up happening is.
But if they wanted to make it work, they could make it work.
They could have made it work.
Yeah,
for sure.
True. Because money makes the mayor run real fast.
Right, it's true. So this is probably asking you very similar to like who's your favorite kid, but if you had to name a couple of your favorite episodes for whatever reason, mine for instance is when the Agrolites did Banana, because I love that.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I can't remember which episode that was in. I definitely remember the segment because that was one I always wanted to do, is have the Agrolites on.
I've watched their performance so many times, but I don't know what episode that was in either. But
I don't remember. Maybe it was the summer episode or fun. Maybe it was the fun episode. Okay. Anyway, it was fun because it was fun. It was fun.
But touch on a couple other maybe of the highlights, the favorite episodes.
Oh man, there's a lot of different ones that we had a great time doing. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, every episode was really special and we got to do so much, but as far as musical guests goes, there was like a big variety over the 4 seasons of people we got to work with and bring in and people we tried to bring on the show. Like my dream was to have Bad Brains on the show like that. I wanted to have Bad Brains on the show like so bad. And HR was having troubles and it was hard to kind of bring them on, but that was like one of my favorite bands of all time as a kid. Bad Brains meant so much to me as a teenager. I was just, man, if we could get Bad Brains on a preschool show, that's like a win right there. Even having Agrolites on was super special. We had Devo. We got to work with Devo because we got to work with Mark a lot. Mark Mothersbaugh. He's kind of like a regular on the show, and Biz Markie, Flaming Lips. We had there's so many bands. MGMT segment was really fun. They did a great thing. So, and we tried to get all of our favorite bands on the show. It was kind of selfish, but we also wanted to present them in a way that was appropriate for our kids. So it was like having them on in a fun way that kids, they don't care that it's Bad Brains or that's Devo or Agrolites. They just think, hey, those guys in the red jumpsuits that are throwing bananas around, those guys are cool. That's fun. Like
no.
Right?
So great.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was a classic cover that they did of the Banana song.
And the red outfit, really outstanding.
It was
right. Yeah, and we looked for ways we could license music too. Like I think we licensed that song properly, the Banana song, and I know my brother Parker did an animation with Greg, not Greg. It wasn't Greg. It was
Alex.
Alex. Yeah,
Alex. Right.
Alex Desire. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Alex was rad, and he came in and they did a ska song. Pick it up.
Yeah. Right. I'll show you that.
All right.
It's pretty cool, and Alex was really cool about it. He came and he toasted on it and sang along with them, and
he does both well.
Yeah, he's great. Alex was awesome. So
You mentioned Biz Markie.
there's so many episodes I love. I can't think of.
No,
like,
that's a good list there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned Biz Markie in passing. What was it like working with him? You know, he has become an ancestor now, unfortunately. Died.
Yeah.
So left us way too early, man.
So Biz, yeah, he did. And Biz was he was awesome. He was so cool. And so we were shooting the pilot in Long Beach and with our own money and some money that we got some of our cousins and our friends, and they put money into it. And it was like, it's a real family affair, like not just a family show, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of relatives and people that work together to make it happen. And we came up with the idea, like, there's a song that Biz Markie does called the Biz Dance, and it's just like, do the Biz Dance. It's just all over the place. And Scott thought it would be fun to have Biz Markie come in and teach a dance. And that's really where the dancey dance segments of the show came from, was Scott's idea to specifically bring Biz onto the show to do it. And this new thing called Facebook just popped up. And we like typed in like, where's Biz Markie now, you know, and he just so happened to be doing a DJ set in LA that week that we were shooting. And our producer, just a young guy, Justin, just messaged him on Facebook and said, hey, would you want to come and be a part of this new kids show? It's a pilot and we can pay you like $400 or something. It was just nothing, you know, and he said, yeah, sure. And so sure, like 2-3 days later, Biz Markie shows up with his manager Monty and his DJ Cool V. And that was the first time we met him, was at the pilot of the show. And we did the whole, Biz came out and taught a dance, and he was cool. And as we were coming off the set, he was like, yeah, you know, Christian, that's pretty cool. But when you guys get picked up, I really want to teach kids how to beatbox. And he's got this big voice, you know, and he's a big guy. Like he's got to be like 6'6", or he's huge. I mean, and his head is like this big. He's a big guy. Like he's like, I want to teach kids how to beatbox. And we were like, well, let's just shoot it right now. Let's just shoot it right now. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we just threw up a green screen and had him stand in front of it. And he like, you know, he spins in, hey kids, you know, he just, that's all Biz.
Wow. That's really,
it was all just out of his head. He just freestyled it. Yeah. Hey kids, gather around for Biz's beat of the day. Here's the beat of the day. And he just did it like on the fly. And he's like, okay, I hope you guys get picked up. I'm like, I know we will after that, because it was magic. It was so magical. And, you know, he was just a great guy, part of the family. And he would call me on Christmas or my birthday, like say happy birthday. We just were really good friends. And it was weird. It was always weird for me, because this is like Biz Markie. He's like a living legend, you know, and I'm just some guy, like I'm just some kid. And he treated me just like we were really good friends. And I was always like, I'd get a text from Biz, and I would be freaking out, like, Biz is texting me, like, but we just became really good friends. And yeah, he came out to all the, he toured with the live tour, and he was such a huge part of Yo Gabba Gabba and our lives, that it was really tough losing him. And I wasn't able to go to his memorial, but Scott went and said it was really touching.
Yeah. Well, that's a great story. Well, speaking of Scott, talk about meeting your longtime friend Scott Schultz, and you two, if I'm not mistaken, began by maybe working on some skateboarding videos back in the day, right? Can you just touch on?
So Scott and I met at like a family reunion party or something when we were like 16 or 17, and we just became really good friends. And my mom ended up remarrying his uncle, so we were like cousins for a while. So when I was about 16, my mom got remarried 17. But we would just like, you know, go skateboarding and surf and go to shows. We were really into music. We loved music. And Scott was a DJ on the weekends. He'd DJ weddings and stuff. And not like you know, he wasn't like Mixmaster Mike DJ, but he was like, you know, he had a great record collection, and anyway, we were really good friends. And so as we got older, I was connected with the skateboarding industry because I'd done a movie when I was 16 called Gleaming the Cube with Christian Slater. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
No,
But
no.
I was a kid actor, and I got cast in this movie. It was like a dream role for me because I was way into skating. I still love skateboarding. I'm just a little old now. So anyway, long story short, Scott and I started working together doing skate videos. And we worked for a company called Acme Skateboards, and we did like videos for their wheels, Formula One wheels. And then we did videos with Channel One Skateboards is another company we worked for. And we worked together, and I would go out and shoot the footage, and he would get all the footage and put it together and start editing. And we were pretty good. We worked pretty well together in tandem. And as we started bands together. We were in a couple bands together. And then as we started the Aquabats, Scott was a big part of like the visual, like videos, things like that. You know, in the days before computer editing, we'd go on the road, and he had like a road case that had like 5 VCRs in it, and he would put videotapes in that would go through the projector and project on the wall. So like the first couple years we did it was like videotapes.
Very great.
It's like mixing live videos and
right.
So we always kind of worked together, and then that's when, you know, we started having a families separate, obviously. We were like, let's make a kids show. Let's make a show for our kids.
Yeah.
Dream come true.
Full circle.
Right. So you talk about being a child actor. Can you tell some of the roles that you played during that time, in addition to the ones you mentioned? And how long did you acting for?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in LA. My family was like, my parents met in drama school, and my older sister did stuff like commercials and TV shows and movies. But yeah, what's that?
Born into show business.
Right.
Yeah, but like I got to be on like Love Boat when I was a kid, and let's think, Married with Children. I was on a bunch of shows like that, and I was in the movie Pretty in Pink with Molly Ringwald.
Really? And how old were you then?
I was 13 when I was in that movie.
Wait, and what was your role in Pretty in Pink?
So the you know, Molly Ringwald has a friend that works she works at a record store, and so like being in LA and being in a movie that kind of centers around a record store, it was perfect. But I was just a kid that came in off the street and like tried to steal stuff, and they shot me with a staple gun. And
I remember that.
Just a little part, you know. But I was supposed to be like this kid that was always trying to steal stuff. And there's a couple scenes that they got edited out, but I got to spend a whole week with Molly Ringwald and Annie Potts, and, you know, John Hughes wrote that movie, who went on to direct all that stuff. So he was always hanging around, and it was cool. But I got to I was like in a record store, like flipping through records all week and like picking out records that I wanted to buy. And that was kind of fun. Do you
remember what record store it was filmed at?
It was like, you know where the promenade is in Santa Monica? There was an old mall in Santa Monica. No. It was the same strip that they filmed Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where like there's a bike shop. There was a bunch of like shops in there that had become like film, like film studios could like rent them and make a fake store or whatever. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Pretty sure it was a fake record store. They just made it for the movie.
Right. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, that's great. I will go back and watch, because Pretty in Pink, clearly one of the often voted as one of the best movies from the 80s too. So
nice.
Well, yeah, and transitioning into like music, like growing up in LA as a kid, I feel really lucky because we had KROQ. Like we had,
of course,
we had Rodney on the rock, but we also had KROQ, and that's where I first heard ska. Like that's where I first heard the Specials, where I first heard Madness, where I heard, like a Mirror in the Bathroom from you know, English Beat. Like, and I was just a pretty little kid. I mean, I'm not super old, so you know, right around this time, all that stuff was breaking, and you know, the first wave or the second wave of ska was really like right when I was started listening to KROQ.
Right.
So
Yeah, same here,
it was
right?
like one of the only stations in the country that was playing new music from England, and music,
Yeah.
you know, and not just ska. Obviously, it was like punk, new wave, Depeche Mode, The Cure. I think
Sure.
that was like the gateway was through LA,
Right.
and it was. I think it was cool to be a part of that because, you know, again, the first time I ever heard the Specials and went out and was like, I want to buy this record was from KROQ, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And LA had such a good music scene in the late 70s, early 80s. It was just, there was always something going on, you know.
Right. Right. So
Cool.
so you touched on some of those two-tone British bands.
Sorry.
You were clearly influenced by them, and did that was that a reason why when you and maybe the original members of the Aquabats were forming, that you wanted to make sure to incorporate ska into what you did?
I think so. I think it was because there was there's a time between like 77 and like 83 or 82 where ska it got into a lot of music kind of in the same way that the third wave would incorporate it, where like new, you know, No Doubt, it started off mostly ska, but then kind of like went into more pop, and then they'd have ska flavored stuff. There was a lot of stuff like that in music in the early 80s. Like, people don't think about it, but the Police, like the
Oh, yeah.
Police is so influenced
Very much
by ska music.
Yeah.
Not just the Police, but like what
The
about
Culture Club?
yeah, Culture Club,
Yeah.
Oingo Boingo.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of ska stuff in. I loved Oingo Boingo as a kid because their songs were so theatrical and
Yeah.
weird. But like a lot of my favorite songs had that upbeat, like and it was basically ska.
I would go
And
as far to say I think Oingo Boingo was LA's first ska band, actually.
yeah, right. I think so.
Yeah.
One of them.
Right.
But you know, and there was so there was a lot of music and bands that maybe they'd have a rock track, but then track 4 is a ska song or ska flavored, or
Right.
you know, and even going into Bad Brains, like you listen into Bad Brains and it's hardcore, and then they stop and play like a reggae song or
Heavy
something
roots.
that's a little more
That was the first
upbeat,
time I heard
roots.
yeah.
Yeah, and that I think
Intersect.
that
Yeah.
bringing it all together really influenced the sound of music that the Aquabats ended up coming up with. It wasn't just ska or just two-tone ska. It was like a lot of those bands that played with ska flavors, you know, even XTC, think about XTC or
Sure.
the Police or Culture Club. There was a lot of groups that had that, you know, flavor. Obviously the Selector, that's part of the two-tone thing,
Right.
but there was so many bands that were kind of even doing upbeat stuff that I think came out of KROQ, and most of the guys in the Aquabats in the beginning were all about the same age. So we wanted to do something that felt ska, but also felt kind of true to the kind of bringing together of sounds, because
Right.
we couldn't really pass ourselves off as a traditional ska band because we kind of weren't, you know,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
We were already a mixed bag of sounds, but you know, in the early days, we were of our band, we were playing with other bands that were really traditional.
You definitely did. Touch on some of the original members of the group back then.
Well, so I my roommate was Crash McLarson, or Chad Larson, my roommate. He's an original member, and then the Boyd, or Cat Boy, our trumpet player, he played trumpet in high school, and he was like, let's, you know, it would be fun to like bust out the horns and do a ska band, and so that was kind of the impetus, was us three, Boyd and Chad and myself, coming up with a plan to like, and then we just kind of recruited people, and some of the early members of the band, kind of fell off or went away, but then we brought people in from the Goodwin Club or, other local bands that we played with a lot. We like recruit guys and people, but it was mostly just kind of friends and people we surfed with or hung out with. And
Yeah.
And what time
it
period?
was definitely very lighthearted and not very serious for a while. Like we were just kind of class clowns trying to see what we could get away with, so maybe it was more like, bad manners or madness in the beginning where it's like, hey, let's do this, it'll be fun, like let's joke around.
And that was
What time period?
94.
94 was when we played our first show.
So the formation started maybe 93.
93-ish. We were all kind of playing
So
music.
exactly 3 decades.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
Yeah, so you guys should actually call this tour the forthcoming tour.
Yeah,
the 30th anniversary. No, I tell you, the 0, 10 to 20 to 30, it makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, it's
And
great.
ticket sales. Oh, yeah, in advertising.
Yeah.
In marketing, a lot of difference. So why did you go the route you followed? Superheroes. Tell us, why did you go that route?
Because really think about it. Now, you never think like, oh, superheroes. That makes sense because superheroes are the biggest thing in the world. But at the time, you're coming out of like the punk explosion. So punk rock explodes with Nirvana and then Green Day and then Offspring. It's like 91, 92, 93.
Right.
And we wanted to do something different. Like, let's go more ska. It's underground. That's cool. Like all the bands I grew up, I went to a lot of punk shows and hardcore shows as a teenager. And then when punk became mainstream, to me, it was like, oh, this is dumb. Like, I don't like it anymore. That's just the way we are sometimes. So I went to a Hepcat show with my brothers and I was like, this is cool. Like people are having fun and there's girls here and they're dancing and no one wants to fight me. Like this is fun. I want to be a part of this. So then I guess, what was the original question again?
What the route you took?
Superhero route.
Oh, okay. So we decided we wanted to do ska, but we also kind of felt like we really liked Devo and we really liked things and like bands that we liked, bands from the 60s or even like Rocket from the Crypt or bands that like wore the same uniform bands. And even the Wailers, like the old pictures of the Wailers, they're all wearing the same suit with 3 buttons and it just it looks nice, so we wanted to do something that was more uniform, but we felt like, what is the dorkiest thing we could do? Like, what do people think is really nerdy and what would get a reaction out of people that would be like, you guys are nerds? And that was superheroes. Like superheroes, like it's so nerdy. And now you think, no, superheroes are cool. Like, Marvel, Iron Man.
So you mentioned,
but at the time it was really dumb. Like, because you go to live shows, it was like, there's a circle pit and there's fights and people are tough guys and everyone. And so if we showed up at a show and we're wearing superhero outfits and we're like, hello, everyone, have a great day. And like people, they hated it. Like at the time, the crowds were really like against it. And we loved it. We loved it because to us, that was what punk rock was supposed to do, is get a reaction out of people.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
So we were like going against the grain, being like goody two shoes kind of a thing, like, hello everyone, we're the Aquabats, and people were like, oh, this is so dumb. But then there was people that got it and then they liked the music, so we just kept doing it.
So you mentioned uniform, the Agrolites uniform. Who picked it, and does it make a difference if you all wear the same outfit? What sort of effect it has on the audience?
I don't know. I think it's interesting.
No, it's extremely bright, eye-catching, in addition to the song. And
sure, but also we're coming in off of like, some of my favorite bands like the Pixies and Nirvana. Like they just showed up in whatever they were wearing. They didn't. It was like they're telling the audience at the time, like, I'm not special. I'm just playing music. It's fine.
Right.
But
you
what
wanted to make a statement
that became is it became a look, it became a thing. So what the no uniform became a uniform. It was like everyone had a flannel around their waist, or the, you know, the Eddie Vedder hair with the boots on. And
Right,
it,
right.
eventually everyone picks a costume. They pick a costume. So we just thought we would pick a costume that was so kind of out there that not many people would want to follow us, that we could be on our own, and then let the music be its own thing. And by doing something like superheroes, and something that was so bright and colorful and weird, because we had like day glow suits and bright, we were bringing all the like neon from the 80s back. You know, I still a big fan of bright colors and things. We were we were definitely going against what was popular at the time, and that was like, you know, cut off jeans with the flannels and the, you know, even flow hair, you know what I mean? Like the Pearl Jammers.
Definitely.
People were looking at us like, you guys are so dumb looking, and that we just loved it. We just liked going against the grain. So
yeah. So
that's kind of that.
Are they comfortable outfits?
Not necessarily.
They don't look very comfortable.
The helmets they're made out of wetsuit material, so you just get so hot wearing them. It's like wearing like a tight wetsuit on your head, and it keeps all the heat in, so you're like cooking your brain while you're playing.
Yeah.
But you know, we committed to it, so we're doing it, you know.
So talk about the scene when you all first started here in Southern California, and the shows that you would play.
So like the punk scene was big, because punk had broken and punk was big, and in Orange County, a lot of the punk bands were like, I wouldn't call them all of them racists, but they were just like wanted to fight. It was very violent. Everything was really violent, and they were looking for excuses to fight. And there was a contingent of like neo-Nazis and racists that would go to shows, and you know, obviously we hated that. We didn't want to be around those type of people. And so the ska scene that was below the No Doubt and the Sublimes, like, because Sublime was able to kind of climb into a different spot.
Yeah.
And at that time, and No Doubt had already made it big pretty much. Like, I think we were a band for about a year when Tragic Kingdom came out, or because I think it came out in 95.
That was right. Yeah.
And that was it. I mean, that was huge. So for us playing shows, it was like there was a small group of bands in Orange County, Real Big Fish, the Knuckle Brothers, Save Ferris wasn't around yet, but there was a couple bands that like kind of fell apart and became Save Ferris, but they were all those people were around, you know, all the people that Monique and Brian and everybody. Brian was in the Knuckle Brothers, I think, for a little bit, and
Willie.
There was a small group of kids that would go and do ska shows, and there was a band called Pocket Lint from LA. I'm trying to think of some other bands that were like that would play all the time. One Eye Open. Do you remember that band? One Eye
Yeah,
Open?
sure. Yeah.
They were like kind of crazy all over the place, but they definitely had some ska flavors in their songs. There was Suburban Rhythm, which was a band for just a hot minute.
Yeah.
And then they broke up and did other things. But what was cool about the scene is everyone knew each other, and it reminded me of like what it must have been like in those early days of the two-tone scene, or the early days of even the punk scene in England or in New York, like the CBGB's days, where it's just like this hole in the wall where, you know, all the bands know each other or date each other, or they're all connected. That was really the Orange County ska scene was a lot like that, because we would see
there was a lot of camaraderie. And
yeah, I felt so. And I think the Aquabats kind of swung in on a vine, like just kind of out of nowhere. And we didn't know a lot of people at first, but we just showed up and started playing, and then we got to know everybody. But it was a little bit competitive too, I think, in the beginning, like, because there was like, I take it back. It was real friendly and fun in the beginning, and then it got competitive.
Okay.
So once No Doubt Tragic Kingdom went big, and then it got kind of competitive because
Then it
everyone
became
was
a race to see who can.
Become the
yeah, yeah.
next no doubt.
And then there was bands like there was a band called Schlep Rock
Oh,
from
right.
the Empire, and they had like a ska hit, right? They got picked up. They put down their punk rock and picked up ska so fast, you know, and because bands were getting signed, bands were getting signed.
Right.
Even, I mean, I'll call it like I see it, but even Goldfinger, like John Feldman and Goldfinger, he was doing some funky electric love hogs or something weird, and then ska got big, and then suddenly, I mean, and we'd already been a band for 2 years. Suddenly Goldfinger shows up and he's wearing a suit and he's driving a scooter to the show, and I was like, I don't know. Whereas, like, we never claimed to be like traditional ska. We were doing our thing, but we did feel a little bit like defensive for the scene and the people that had been doing it for a while. Like, please let them go ahead and make it like, and we were excited for Real Big Fish when they got signed, because Aaron and those guys have been doing it for so long.
Sure.
Like, they'd already been a band for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And when they got signed, it made sense. And because they're super talented, and Aaron loves ska so much, and he's so faithful to it. It was cool. It was cool to see that they got signed,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, that's true.
and we weren't like racing to get signed. We were just kind of having fun and thought, wouldn't it be funny if we got a record deal? But and we did a bunch of showcases. Like, we played shows for certain labels. And what's funny, the funny thing is, because we wore costumes and we were weird and fought monsters, and even at the showcases we were like doing antics and stuff, every big label that came and saw us play, every single one of them, and there was like 4 or 5, right after we play, they would say like, yeah, that was pretty cool, but your drummer is awesome. Your drummer's great. See you later. Because Travis Barker was our drummer at the time.
Oh, right.
So,
I suppose it was
Yes,
exceptionally good, eh?
yeah, he's so good. I mean, he's
imagine.
amazing.
Yeah.
So I was like, so what did you think of the show? Aquabats, yeah, your drummer's great. See you later.
At least they had great taste in drummers.
Yeah, that's true. And Travis is pretty good.
Yes.
He's
So,
pretty good.
which band did the Aquabats open for most of the time on tour? Opening.
One of our early, I think one of our first tours we did, like opening, we went out with the Toasters. We went out with the Toasters and
East Coast.
Right. Yeah.
that was like a full US tour we did. That was the first US tour we did with the Toasters. We started
Approximately how many stops?
We went east and came back.
Wow, approximately how many stops across the US?
Man, I don't know. It was a lot. It was like maybe 50.
Back then,
shows.
all the states are ska, or some form of ska.
Not really. No, I mean, kind of, but it was small. Like some places we played, like in Kansas or Nebraska, I mean, 10 people maybe would show up. It was like the Toasters, Real Big Fish, and the Aquabats, and like there was hardly anyone there. We played this place called the Launch Pad in New Mexico, and there was maybe like 7 people there. And it could hold like 1,000 people, and it was the Toasters. I mean, the Toasters, like, they've been around forever. Bucket and the Crew, and some of the guys in the Toasters had been doing it for a long time, and they, we were all just kids, like in our early 20s, and the Toasters were like, wow, they were in their mid 30s or maybe even 40. Oh my gosh.
So in retrospect, what's the cause of the failure? Lack of airplay?
Yeah. I mean, no one really had caught the ska thing until well after No Doubt had broken. Like, there was just small pockets of people that even knew what it was, and even then it was, I think, because it was sometimes it was associated with like guys that were in band that could play, I can play this. I can play the soprano saxophone. Okay, you're in a band. It's a ska band, It didn't always like translate to be like that cool for the modern third wave ska kids across the country. It just, it kind of became this weird mutant, whereas like the two-tone stuff was so cool. Everything was so cool. Like everyone's like sharp, but their musicianship was so good. And whereas, somewhere along the way, and I don't know if it was Skank and Pickle or one of those bands along the way started like doing the upbeats really fast. Like, I think Operation Ivy might have had a little bit of something to do with that too. But eventually, when all the bands are doing the upbeat so fast, and then the horns are just going over it, it just sounds like chaos. It lost its groove. And like when you like take the groove out of ska, it's like you're kind of missing the point a little bit, don't you think?
I second that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely makes for a good mosh pit, right? And gets the energy going.
But then you see bands like the Agrolites play, and they play hard, and it's like it's fast, but it's got the
groove
in there. And then I'd be like, okay, that's what I'm talking about. Like that's real ska. And we were guilty of the fast stuff too. Like we definitely did that, especially on our first record, because that's kind of what everyone was doing a little bit at the time. And we thought, okay, that's cool. We like it too.
But that was the trend mostly in Orange County, because from what I've seen and observed, the guys sort of stayed hardcore,
more traditional.
Sure. Yeah, the California ska got real like it kind of lost some groove, you know what I mean? But there were still bands out there like doing it right, like Mustard Plug. I thought did good stuff, MU330, and there was bands like, okay, I can hear this is a pop structured song, but it's got ska groove in it. That this is cool, and so that's where, as we went out on tour and started encountering a lot of different flavors of ska and different bands, we were able to like grow our sound a little bit broader as well, as opposed to like just what we were listening to in our little Orange County bubble,
Right. So let's talk about the your writing process. Some of your
and by no means was I dissing any bands by saying that, but you know what I mean. Like,
of course,
sometimes when the upbeats go too quickly, it kind of ruins the groove. Like it's hard, and you can mosh to it, you can jump off the stage to it, but like,
but it's not ska. But it's called, they call it ska.
You said it.
But they call it ska.
Right. Yeah. You can call it ska, but it's not really ska.
So some of your songs, could be considered a little funny and wacky, so to speak. But talk about the writing process and the recording process, just in general, as it relates to the Aquabats.
Okay, sure. I mean, it's pretty democratic, I guess. It's pretty like anyone could come up with an idea. Usually it's me coming up with the lyrics and a lot of times the melodies over stuff. But in the early days, because my roommate was Crash, the bass player, and he plays guitar as well, we would just sit on the couch on weekends and just write songs, like just to make ourselves laugh or whatever, or, something to address things that were happening at shows, people fighting, or, girls that we liked, but maybe they had bad breath or whatever, you know what I mean? Just like silly stuff that you write when you're a young, stupid kid, And so that kind of morphed into like being really conscious of the songs, the type of songs we were writing, like thematically usually are humorous or kind of like satirical or kind of social commentary, which kind of follows in the footsteps of, bands like Devo or Oingo Boingo, or even in the ska scene, like, Specials had songs that were, social commentaries, like you can think of the ones that weren't cover songs were kind of like social commentary songs, and some of them were really funny, like silly.
And why is that so that the guys in England are more inclined? Well, we know Jamaicans are obligated to, but more inclined to address social and political issues as opposed to the California.
I think because, you know, and not to put my tinfoil hat on a little bit, but I think in England, obviously education is super important, and people are educated to know what's going on, and they can see what's going on. And I think we're starting to get to those kind of levels now, but I think people in America have been asleep for a long time to what's really going on, like behind the scenes. And I think the whole like Patriots, American, you know, we're not bad, we're good, we're the good guys. I think that kind of lulls people in America sometimes to sleep, to thinking like, oh, you know, there's nothing wrong. I get 3 square meals a day. I live with my parents. I'm good. You know, like what's wrong? There's nothing wrong. But like, it was kind of like what we were talking about earlier.
Me personally, right?
Yeah, it doesn't affect me. So why do I care? And that's kind of, it's sad to say, but that's definitely a product of what has happened in America for too long, where people are just asleep.
But I like your observation that enlightenment is coming to America slowly.
Yeah. But it's also like people that go through hardships and go through a tough times, like kids in Orange County, you know, their hardships are definitely different. They're emotional, they're mental. Their parents live on both sides of town. They're not getting, but like material wise, they're fine. Like they've got their car and they got their jobs and they're good, but maybe they don't, you know what I'm saying? Like the issues are different. So and I think that again, we've been kind of asleep, and we're starting to wake up a little bit more as a country in America, but because things have been so comfortable, what's wrong? You know, what's wrong? But you look at, and I never lived in London or Kingston or Jamaica, but there's issues there. You know, there's a disparage. There's like the rich, super rich, and the super poor, you know, but you come to Orange County and everyone's like middle class, everything's fine. You know, I'm just going along. Nothing could be. And then people are aware of problems because the education system isn't letting them know, you know, they don't let you know that there's, hey, by the way, there's problems. Oh, by the way, there's these rich elite people that own everything in the world that you buy. These 2 companies own everything. Like you don't learn that. And that's what's great about the internet is you can go and like study stuff and learn and find out that, wow, our world has just been a giant lie for so long.
That's right. For mighty long time.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild, right?
Right, a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think coming out of the pandemic, a lot of people are beginning to realize now that it's, you know, life is not what they thought it was. We see homeless everywhere, everywhere.
Yeah.
Not just in the rundown or low income areas, but all across Southern California. And I suppose the same thing everywhere in America.
True.
And what has caused that? Like what? And you can't blame it all on drugs. You can't, because there has to be a moment where you're like, okay, I don't want to live on the street anymore. But there's not. They want to. You know what I mean? Then what's happened? What's changed? You know, and people, oh, they're on drugs, but I think a lot of it is also there's a lot of mental illness going on in society that gets unchecked and untreated, and you know how much of that is coming from what we're eating, what we're injecting in ourselves, like what is it, like what has changed? You know, I'm 51 years old. I'm and growing up as a kid, I never saw this amount of homelessness, this amount of you know, mental illness, like people in the streets like this. I've never seen it. Never.
No, it's far worse than it's ever been.
But I think we come to the realization that the system is brutal. Because in spite of what's happening, the rich are getting richer.
That's right.
And we're seeing more people on the street.
And the poor get the picture, right? Like we get it now. The rich get richer, the poor get the picture, right? Like that's
true.
It's wild. It's wild. And that shows you where, like, you know, and punk rock and hardcore had a lot to do with showing me as a young suburbanite kid, like, oh yeah, there is problems in the world. And same with ska, there is a disparage there. And a lot of times I got to admit, as a kid, I didn't really understand everything that they were talking about. Like, I don't get it. But now, as a 50-year-old, I get it. I can see it. You see it. And you understand the class warfare that's happening between, the way elites and everyone else. It's just like, and kind of like the puppet masters. It's pretty scary. It's scary, like, to think about what the future is going to hold. But also at the same time, we as human beings, we have to, like, be positive and show love and know that we can come together and love each other and do what's right. And, like,
true. Yeah.
You can't give up.
You can't just throw up our
not at all. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we were talking about that earlier. Like, did you ever give up on your idea? Did you ever give up on your idea to do Yo Gabba Gabba? And sure, there was times I thought about it, but it's the same thing as what we're talking about now. It's like, you think about how powerless you feel sometimes against the system, but, like, do we just quit, or do we keep going? We have to keep going. We have to keep producing positive things and showing people that there's a better way. Maybe we'll never see it, and maybe it will get way worse before it gets better. But there has to be people like us that believe in a better system, a better way.
Right.
Yep.
And that's us right here, right now.
Yeah.
Because the kids are gonna ask.
I'm with you.
Yeah, the kids are gonna ask, what did you do during the coming out of the pandemic?
Right.
Yeah. Did you take a stand? Did you support the corporations, or you sided with the homeless, the less fortunate? Those are some of the questions we're gonna ask. But I want to sort of shift focus now and ask how important were platforms like MTV, KROQ, not too many radio stations, the Van Warp Tour, and so on, provided an outlet, an exposure for the group?
I mean, radio was a big one when we first started. Like, that was the only way, and things have changed so much in I guess I don't want to say 30 years, but
but can we, it's not plural, it's not radio station, it was one radio, singular, right?
Yes, but it was stations. It was multiple stations. Yeah. But if KROQ picked up your song, there's going to be 100 stations that will go, okay, KROQ's got it.
So they were sort of the leaders, the trendsetters.
Yeah, and there, I don't remember what the station was in New York, but there was also a New York station. So whatever they were playing in heavy rotation, other imitator stations would take it and start playing it. And so when we were out on tour, when our song got picked up on the radio in LA, super rad. And we'd go out on tour, there were some cities and some towns that did play our song on their station. And so we would go do like a radio interview with them. We played radio shows, like kind of how they have the Weenie Roast here in LA still. They were doing those imitation type festivals all across the country. So you think that, Radiohead comes into town to play the Weenie Roast. No, they're playing the Weenie Roast and like 20 other ones across the country, because there was like KROQ was such a big like pioneer that so many stations followed in their footsteps and did similar things. So that was the big one. If you could get on KROQ and stay in rotation, you're most likely gonna go.
It's kind of understandable because LA is seen as the entertainment capital of US.
Right. Yep. That was a really big one. And by then KROQ had become a lot more corporate and big business than it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was loose and it was fast, and like you could hear all kinds of different music, and it didn't matter if it was popular or not. Everything you heard was not popular. Like there was no John Cougar Mellencamp or that type of stuff. And it was interesting in the early days of KROQ, if a band like the Police broke through, they would kind of stop playing them as much. Like they wouldn't play their mainstream hits. They would only play their old stuff. So they'd play like Message in a Bottle or like these old things. They wouldn't play like, you know, synchronicity or, you know, I'll be wrapped
So that's
around your
before they became corporate or after?
yeah.
Before.
When bands got big and went big,
Yeah.
KROQ was like, okay, let's just focus on the bands that aren't big yet. But
Mhm.
then pretty soon, every band that KROQ had introduced, the Police, the Depeche Mode, the Cure, all these bands got so big that KROQ's like, okay, well, we're the station that broke these bands. Now let's break these other bands. So then everyone started paying attention to KROQ, like, okay, who's the next band? So
Sure.
obviously KROQ broke Sublime, they broke No Doubt, they, you know, the third wave of ska is 100% KROQ, like from
Yeah.
LA.
Right.
Right.
Great.
And so yeah, we got played on KROQ, and people would request our songs, and they were playing us for a while. It was a trip for me because growing up listening to us, like, I can't believe it, we're getting played on the radio. This is crazy.
Excellent.
But and then so then and then MTV was the next step. So if you could at the time, if you had a good video
Mhm.
that wasn't just about the song, it was also about like the watchability of your video.
For
You
sure.
know, so like for instance, so this is a bad example, but like the Beastie Boys Sabotage video was so watchable and funny because it was, you know, making fun of all those old detective shows. And you see the Beastie Boys that were like, you know,
Right.
wearing clocks and Kangol hats, and they were kind of fake hip hop, and now they're like
Detectives and
fat
cops.
mustaches and detectives, and that was funny. So obviously that was like a huge shot in the arm for the Beastie Boys. Like that's kind of what like revamped them, was that video.
Yeah.
Even though they were already great and people loved them. So at the time we were like, okay, how can we do a music video and get people's attention with, we already have this kind of like strike against us wearing these weird costumes. Like, how can we get people interested in what we're doing? And it worked for, I think it worked for a little bit, but again, like there was kind of a backlash against the like positivity and the friendliness and the like, you know, the happy earnestness of ska. There was definitely a backlash that came, and that was like the whole new metal thing was
Right.
like
Yeah.
came in really quick.
Right. So
Like,
so prior to the new metal coming in, and you touched on this briefly earlier, but talk about getting signed to Golden Voice. I think it was around 97, right? And talk about their role and that whole project. I think it was the Fury of the Aquabats, right?
yeah. So Paul Tillett, obviously
Yeah.
legend in the industry, he has roots in ska and mod. Like he was like, he loved ska, he loves mod, he still has like a ton of respect for it, and he's always bringing ska bands back to Coachella. Like he'll bring bands back, he'll make offers to bands that haven't been
You
playing.
all played Coachella.
What's that? Oh yeah, for sure.
Paul's a legend, a visionary to me.
And he's such a great guy, but like
A great vision.
he came to us after a show at the Glass House. Actually, it was like one of the first shows we've ever played at the Glass House. And this was right, I think it might have been Travis's first show, Travis Barker's first show in the band. And he said, he goes, hey, you know, Golden Voice, we've been around for a while, and I've always wanted to do a record label. And I always thought I want to sign a band that would help make our label like what it is. And I was going to start the label a few years ago because there was this band that I was really interested in, and they're amazing. And I was like, I should start a label and have them be my first band. And I let them go. And he goes, I haven't felt the same way about a band since, until you guys, like, you have something magic. There's something special about what you're doing. And I'd love to start the Golden Voice record label with you guys as our first band, our first signing.
Nice.
And we were like, what? This is crazy. Oh my gosh. Like, I can't believe it. Cause Paul Tillett, that's like legendary. I used to go to all the Golden Voice shows and pay $5 and see 10 bands and like, you know, anyways. And I said, well, who's that band? I said, what band were you talking about? He said, No Doubt. He's like, I used to go see No Doubt and they were amazing. And I always thought I should start a label and have them be the first band.
Right.
But I didn't do it. And now they're No Doubt. And so he's like, I'd like to start our label with you guys. And I felt bad because, you know, obviously we didn't transcend like No Doubt did, you know, we didn't really get out of the box too hard, but you know, he put out a Madness record, a Live Madness record.
Yeah, live from Universal Amphitheater, right?
You know, the Bicycle Thief, which is like Bob Forrest's band he was doing. And when he was in recovery. And anyway, Paul has great taste, and I think that label would have been even better and better if he would have been able to keep going. But
Yeah.
what happened at Golden Voice was the label came out, a couple records came out, and then he had an idea to do a festival, and that was Coachella.
Mhm.
And then the first Coachella festival, Paul like sunk a lot of his own money and investment into it, and then he kind of lost his shirt. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have seen the documentary, The 20 Years in the Desert,
Right.
on YouTube. It's like the documentary about Coachella, and he kind of talks about this, how they lost a ton of money on that first Coachella. And you know, you're at a small promotional company, Golden Voice, you have a couple partners, but you're the guy.
Mhm.
You lose a ton of money on a big festival. You know, you've got to cut
Yeah.
costs. The
Right.
first thing that cuts is the record label went away. So I
Understandable.
remember we had just released our second record, and we were out on tour, and there was no tour support, and people didn't even know we had a new record because basically the record label closed while we were on tour. And
Okay.
it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough for Paul and for us, because it
Sure.
just like kind of pulled the rug out from underneath us. But
Right.
you know, obviously Paul Tollett is a genius, and his idea kept going, and he figured out a way to keep it alive, and we figured out a way to keep the Aquabats alive. So
Sure. That's good.
we
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all win.
That's true.
So what became of that record?
What's that?
What became of the record that you recorded for him?
Yeah, Floating Eye of Death was
Full-length
our
album?
second.
Back
So
then it was
the first record we did with Golden Voice was The Fury of the Aquabats.
single or album?
What's that?
Was it a single or album?
Full
Album, a full album. So The Fury of the Aquabats was the first record we did with Golden Voice, and that, because Paul has so much influence, that was the record that got played on the radio. The song Super Rad was on that record.
Mhm.
And that was a lot more ska stuff on that record. It was mostly ska flavored songs on that record.
Yeah.
And then the next record we did was like a year later, came out in '99. Was we kind of like went different directions, and the record label was going in a different direction. We as a band were going in different directions. Like guys were leaving. Travis left and went to Blink-182, and our guitar player Charles left, and it was kind of like there was like a little bit of a split in the band. Like some guys wanted to play, you know, weird prog rock stuff, and some guys wanted to do just punk ska. And so that record was kind of like it came out at a weird time for us as a band too, because, you know, Paul told us there was no singles on the record. You know, I mean,
That was released.
we played him the record, and we're like, what do you think? He's like, I don't hear any singles on this record. And we were bummed, because it was like, we wanted to impress Paul more than anybody. Like, and if he didn't think there was a strong song on the record to push to radio, we felt like we let him down, you know. It was kind of a bummer, because we had like a tumultuous time making the record, and then Golden Voice is going through a hard time, and then we let Paul down. Like we felt really bad about that record. But there's some fun songs on there. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's definitely weird.
Right. Yeah. Also in '97, if I'm not mistaken, Shanachie Records put out a tribute to the Skatalites album, and you guys contributed Ska Boss, right?
Ska Boss. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the Ska Boss. Who's the Ska Boss?
Yeah.
I know we were listening to it again a little bit before we hopped on with you tonight. Definitely a little more on the traditional, right? Jamaican sound. Did you all record any more songs that were like that, or was that specifically in that style because it was a tribute to the Godfather, so to speak?
I think it was true. We loved that traditional sound. We really liked it, and we kind of always felt like posers trying to do it, even though we could do it. We just didn't feel like authorized to do that. We kind of felt like mutants already. So like we wanted to do that song in definitely more of a traditional style and add a little bit of our flavor to it. But we also didn't want it. We wanted to pay respect to the original and not like not change it too much, but not do it exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because sometimes people do cover songs and they basically just make the same
The
song.
exact same,
It's
yeah.
just them singing. And we didn't want to do that because we just didn't, we like respected the material, the source material we had respect for. And we're like, this is legendary. We don't want to mess with it too much. And, you know, believe it or not, we always kind of felt a little weird getting asked to do stuff like that because it's like, we felt like such mutants and kind of like far away from Jamaica. Like we grew up in California and
But I'm glad the LA
we're a bunch of like, you know, posers, you know.
But I'm glad that's not the prevailing feelings with some of the LA bands, because they really try to keep the music as close as possible to their traditional ska and rocksteady and
some bands,
skinhead
sure,
reggae.
right.
A lot of bands. So
Yeah,
that
sure.
when legends come to town, they feel at home, really and
Yeah.
truly.
That's right. I mean, Hepcat is probably like a great case in point. Like that's
Very much so.
we played a ton of shows with Hepcat in the early days, and we were always like, we're not worthy. Like these guys are amazing, you know. And we love those guys, and they always treated us very nice. You know, they were really very cool to us. They didn't, and we were just like little obnoxious kids, you know. And but they were always super cool to us, and
Yeah.
so that's why working with Alex on Yo Gabba Gabba was also really fun, because it was kind of like we got to feature him on something that could, you know, was outside the clubs, and it was
Sure.
like a cool kids thing. And obviously he's had a great career, his acting career and stuff too. But
Very much so.
so for me, that was, you know, Bad Brains was the band that made me want to start a band. And then Hepcat was the band that made me want to play a ska band, be a ska scene, because the scene was so cool around what they were doing. And Hepcat, you know, like that's for LA, it doesn't get better than that. I mean,
They're still as amazing as always.
And I think there was a story I told Eric. I think we were at either the Greek or a Reggae Sunsplash, where
It was at the Greek.
The Greek, and Hepcat played, and someone from Jamaica, it's a female. She said, "This is real Jamaica." The real hearts like Skatalites. I say, yeah, real man. They're keeping it real.
Yeah, Greg and Alex, they just kept it real, and that
right. People didn't expect that in Los Angeles, but yeah, it exists.
It's true.
You know, and they kept it real by doing and did originals. You know, they didn't do a ton of cover songs. They did their own songs. You know, and even when I was making skateboard videos back in the day with Scott, like we put Hepcat songs into the videos. You know, there was a guy, Tony Persino, that he wanted to skate to his skate part to be to Hepcat, because he had a smooth style and it worked so good. Like it was like a traditional ska beat, real ska song. And so that's why we always had a little bit of like, not issues, but we didn't ever consider ourselves real ska, because we knew what real ska was and what it sounded like and what you felt like when you listened to it. And we were doing crazy. We were like going crazy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we stood up for the scene, and we didn't put it down. That's who we were, you know.
No, but very much so.
For someone who is listening in, you know, other parts of the country or perhaps the world, we have several bands out here. Help me, Eric, that, you know, really and truly stay with the traditional as much as they possibly can. Delirious, 3045.
Yeah.
The list is endless. Mention a couple.
Yeah.
Blanco Negro, Chris Murray.
Yeah.
Chris Murray, he's always great.
Yeah, a number of them from Los Angeles, right?
He's diehard.
Very much so.
And just, you know, we may, I don't know if we bummed any of those guys out or you know, pissed some people off because we weren't traditional, and so, you know, there's a little bit of insecurity on my part, and maybe some of the guys in the band, that, you know, we would go play with these bands and we were like basically mutating ska and making it weird, and they're doing the real thing. And, you know, I hope that, you know, we're all doing our own thing, so it's fine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
like different
I don't think
strokes
we
for
can take it
folks,
personally.
it's fine. But, you know, there was always a little, I would feel way more insecure playing with those bands than I would even playing with like Blink or The Offspring or any of those.
I understand. Yeah.
Whatever. Big bands, I don't even care. It's the bands that are like real and that have real players in them that nobody kind of really knows about on a big scale. Like those are the bands that you got respect for, and you're like, oh man, those guys are the real thing. And there's a lot of players like Chris Murray, like you're saying, and there's a lot of guys out there that maybe don't get their due respect because people don't really understand what they're doing.
Standard time.
But we always did, like, you know, because we have some pretty good musicians in our band. Like they always like had just tons of respect for all the jazz ska bands, like the ska bands that really did good jazz, you know.
Great drummer now, and Ricky Fitness.
Yeah, Ricky's great. You know, he had his own kind of ska mutant band with assorted jelly beans.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
They were kind of like a ska
band. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, since we're talking about the whole SoCal scene, but Ska Parade, Tazy Phillips played a big role in this whole scene. Touch on any of your work with Tazy and the Ska Parade.
Well, yeah, because Tazy did a show out of UC Irvine, which, you know, like it was a radio show, but he was just more than the show. I think the show was his radio show at UC Irvine was kind of like his license to just be Tazy, you know. Not a lot of people could even get the station. Like you couldn't tune into it because it was an AM station. You couldn't hear it. But the Ska Parade was his, you know, radio show he did on Saturdays, on the weekends, and it was just all ska stuff. But he was such an enthusiast of ska. Like he was at every show, like all the shows, even those little shows that there was this little place all the bands used to play called Cafe Nove, and it kind of on the borderline of like Placentia and Brea and Fullerton, where they all kind of come together.
Yeah.
Like Yorba Linda kind of area. And it was just a little strip mall, and it was like it was a dance studio that like maybe someone taught little kids dance lessons during the day. And then at night, there was no stage. It was just a room with a bar and a mirror, and bands would set up and play. And there was like a ton of bands played there. We played there with some of our first shows, Real Big Fish all the time. And Tazy was at every show, and he was always promoting his show, but he was always promoting ska. Like he was always promoting ska, and he was always an enthusiast. And he recorded us a few times. He had us on his show a number of times, and he was just being an enthusiast was really important to have somebody that was that into it. Yeah.
With the Orange County bands, it really has played a big role.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Really, right.
Yeah, hello.
And I think he was interning at KROQ, and that, you know, the story goes that he got them the Sublime song, and that became a single. And
right.
Very much so. Yeah.
You lived in Japan for a while, right?
Yeah. I lived in Japan.
Okay, so our research served us correctly. And what was it like going back to Japan? Did you play when you went back? Was it like a home?
No, so I was in Japan on a church mission. Like I was there as a missionary, and so like I basically went from skateboarding, surfing, and going to shows every day and being crazy to like putting on a suit and tie and like riding a bike and teaching people about God. And I did that for 2 years. It was kind of like going in the army, but you don't kill people. You like try to like teach people about Jesus Christ, you know? And so teach people to love each other instead of teaching someone how to kill each other. And I was there right when punk broke. So like, I remember the first time I heard,
what time are we talking about for the record?
1991 to 1993. So like the first time I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit, I was in a 7-Eleven in Japan. Wow. And I was like, wait, what is this song? And I asked one of the younger guys, I'm like, what is this song? He's like, oh, it's some band called Nirvana or something. And I was like, wait, what? I'm in Japan and they're playing Nirvana on the radio. Because before I listened to Nirvana, but it was like all the old Bleach stuff and the Sub Pop stuff. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. So when I came home from Japan, the world was like totally different place. It's like so much of the stuff that I thought was underground and different and like stuff I was into everyone liked it. You know, everyone was into it. And it was like a whole different scene. And, you know, everyone stage dived, and like, didn't matter what concert you'd go to, there would be a mosh pit. And it was like, this is so weird. Cause I never went to shows in Japan. I never read the newspaper. I never listened to the radio, except for if you were in a store. I never read the newspapers. I never watched TV.
So you
So,
work
like,
because of your church?
just focused on like being a missionary, and it was such a different thing. Like, it was so weird coming back, and then what, and then
What made you sign up for that?
just
Give me background from Hollywood.
yeah. Well, my family, we grew up in Hollywood and stuff, but my family was always very religious.
Mhm.
I think, as a teenager, I got really into music and punk and skateboarding and like, things that go along with that. And I kind of felt unhappy. Like, I didn't know why I was mad all the time. I didn't know why I was like, and so then as I started getting older, I gravitated towards like, my faith and
Yep.
religion and praying. I prayed a lot and meditated, and I found like the spiritual side of things helped ground me a little bit better and gave me a better perspective, not just on myself, but on other people, and how to like love people and, being more charitable and giving people stuff made me feel happier than like stealing from people,
Right.
and like, ripping people off or whatever you do when you're a punk, or that just made me unhappy. So going the opposite way and, giving people stuff and giving people the shirt off my back or money out of my wallet, whatever, that just made me feel more happy. And so that kind of led me to like wanting to go pursue my faith onto my mission, and my parents got divorced also when I was like 14. And that really helped me jump into the angry young punk that I was for a couple of years. And it just made me unhappy. So I just wanted to become a better person.
Right.
And that's, yeah.
But-
And yeah, I don't regret it. It was like the really great and super influential time of my life, and taught me a lot of things, taught me a lot of self-discipline, and it taught me things about myself and about, human nature, and really dedicating yourself to helping other people. That's the best way to make you happy. Like money and drugs and girls and fast cars, that's all fake. It's really how we connect with other people and give. That's where happiness is.
Yeah.
So how were you able to communicate with people in Japan and you don't speak Japanese?
Well, that before I went, we go to like a training center and you learn a little bit of Japanese. And when you get there, you just study all the time, and you ask them to teach you, like, please to help me communicate. So by the end of 2 years, I could speak pretty well Japanese.
Yeah. Ogenki desu ka?
Ma, chotto ne. Chotto.
I took a year Japanese in college at Cal State Long Beach, and I don't remember much.
Mushi mushi.
Moshi.
So fast forward though, when the Aquabats toured Japan, that must have been special for you, right?
That was like that was it. That was the mountaintop. Like that,
Yeah.
when we got to play in Japan. For me,
Homecoming, right?
I had a special connection living there, and I love the people. I love Japan, and being able to play there was like, and the way they treat you there is you're like so good. They treat you so well, and it makes you want to be like that in your own life. Like, man, I want to treat people like they're treating me, and I want to be reverent and respectful of someone's craft, even if I don't understand it. And that's how all of the people that were working behind the scenes on the shows that we played, the people that drove you in the cars, like they just take care of you so well there and respect you as an artist. And then you come back and play shows in America, and the front of house guy, turns you down on purpose, like, hey, could you?
How dare you bother them?
I'll turn you down, man. Shut up.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I'm trying to turn you out.
Right. Look what happened. I've been there twice.
Right. Japan's amazing.
Yeah.
So good. We've only been there once as a band.
Yeah, check out. I went to a couple of dances.
Great, right? And all the ska bands, we've always.
Can I step on your shoes? Bowing, reflect.
We've always tried to, like,
you pull out your gun, guy on your clock.
Wow.
Right, and like when you finish the song, it's quiet for a second, and then they make sure the song is over, and then they clap. Okay.
Wow.
Very good, very good.
Your respect and love.
They're so respectful. It's like did we do something wrong? And then they start clapping.
Yeah.
To make sure the song's over.
Yeah.
They give you that much respect.
Right. Well, and that might be one of them, but our next question, so it's perfect lead in as we come to a close here soon. If you had to choose a few career highlights, what would be on that short list, or maybe a long list?
That would be one for sure. Going to Japan. We did a deal with Nitro Records, which is Offspring, Brian from Offspring's label, and the Offspring took us with them to Japan. So I'll always be grateful to them for that, for taking us to Japan. And we've, ever since then, we've always like calling people, hey, anyone want to take us to Japan? Anybody? But yeah, it's not that easy. But that I would say that's definitely a highlight. Was we went to Japan and we flew back to LA and got right on a plane and flew to England. And that was like back to back. First time we were in England, first time we were in Japan. Wow. And England was different. It was a different story. Like it was rained every day and it was a little bit more miserable, but the people were amazing. I love the people in the UK. I love the people in Japan. Just so enthusiastic and respectful and cool and funny. Like the English have such a great sense of humor, very self-deprecating and willing to make fun of themselves, which is like right up my alley. Like, that's all about the vocabulary. Yeah. And so that tour was a definite highlight. I think we got to play one of the acoustic Christmases with KROQ's Acoustic Christmas. Yep. The year that our record came out, 97, we played that acoustic Christmas, and the lineup of that was pretty wild. Like David Bowie was headlining, and Green Day played, and I'm trying to think, it was a kind of a crazy lineup. But yeah, our dressing room was right next to David Bowie's, and he'd come out of the dressing room with all these security guards, and we were just like, oh my gosh, there he is, the legend. Yeah, that was a highlight. Green Day was there, and they were being rowdy, and it was funny. And I'm trying to think of some other career highlights. There's a ton, but
yeah, well, those are some good.
We did a Kickstarter to bring our TV show back. I think doing the TV show was not just Yo Gabba Gabba, but the Aquabats Super Show.
Yes,
we finally got to make that show happen, and we did it for a network called The Hub. I think that was a big highlight. Couple of years that we worked on that show was like, it was really like all the dreams came together. Like all of our dreams came true making that show, because it wasn't easy to make. It was hard, but it was just like, this is what we always wanted to do. We always wanted to make the show. And
we mean hard.
Like physically it was tough. Like we shot a lot of exteriors. So like Yo Gabba Gabba is all inside, and it's like the set there, and you just turn on the lights and go. It's fun, but Aquabats would be like, we'd have to be there before the sun came up, and then we'd have to shoot until the sun went down. And it's real physical, and we're fighting and jumping, and we didn't have money to afford like a lot of stunt doubles. So we were doing most of the stunts. We were all in our mid 30s or late 30s, almost 40s when we were making the show, and so we were getting beat up and
bruised.
But it was like so much fun, like shooting all night long and just going crazy. And this is what we always wanted to do. But then we also got to put a lot of music in the show, write a lot of songs, and that was definitely a lot of fun. And working with Weird Al, and we did a Kickstarter to bring the show back. And it was kind of like a marathon telethon, and we got to, Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols came and played a song, and Jesse from Eagles of Death Metal, and Weird Al came out and played dueling banjos with Eagle Bones, our guitar player. And
highlight.
That was pretty cool. Like that was pretty cool. Like we're still like big music fans, so like anytime we get to play with legends, we're just blown away. But we did the Madness tour we did was a big highlight, and that was the tour where we were on tour with Blink and Madness, Blink-182, the Aquabats, Royal Crown Review, and that was the tour where Travis kind of made the switch too. But
Okay.
playing with Madness for a week straight every day was awesome, and they were so cool, like such cool guys. And
What country?
that
England?
was
Here?
in America, yeah. Here
Yeah,
in America.
I saw the Universal Amphitheater show. I was working there at the time, but
Mm.
yeah, that was pretty epic.
That was really fun. It was the first time they'd been back in the States since the 80s.
Right.
So it was kind of like a welcome back Madness tour.
Yep.
And Paul was a big part of putting that together. I mean, he was the one that called their manager and said, "Hey, how do we get the
Welcome,
band
Golden
back?
Voice.
Yeah, Paul T. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
How do we get Madness back together?" Because they hadn't played shows together for a long time.
Right.
And he said, "They'll come back together. I'll put them on this tour, and they can, I'll pay them this much money." And
Nice.
I think he had a lot to do with that because he loved Madness.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love Madness?
Right. Well, we just about reached our destination. What projects are you working on now? Recording, television that you can speak of?
Yeah, so we're finishing up a new season or a new show based on Yo Gabba Gabba. It's basically Yo Gabba Gabba, but and the announcement will come out pretty soon to show the lineup and who's in the show and what's going on, and that's really taking up most of my time right now. But we have a tour coming up with the Aquabats. We leave on the 12th. I think we play in Phoenix on the 12th, and then we finish up in San Diego on the 29th of July.
Your glass house.
Yeah, July 27th class, July 28th at the Block.
Which, hey, you guys, let me know. Text me.
We're going
put
to
you
see you there.
I'll put you on the
And I
list.
think you have the special guests. Agrolites are doing.
Agrolites. Yep,
We know
Agrolites.
those guys.
We know those guys.
We know those guys, Agrolites.
And
Yeah.
I love the Agrolites so much. I did a commercial a couple of years ago for Igloo Coolers. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. That was super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, what would be the perfect song is Agrolites spelling out igloo, but with their AGGRO song.
Right.
It would work perfect. And people were like, "What are you talking about?" And then we, fortunately, we were able to talk Jesse and the guys into doing it. They were a little suspicious, like, I don't know, is this legit? And I'm like, no, it's gonna be good. It's fine. So, but I don't know if you've seen it, but you got
I am.
a bunch of Yetis. It's so good. That's a good one.
Yeah. No,
But, and then we're working on a new Aquabats record. We started recording
album, single,
an album, a full album.
Oh, nice.
We started recording in the fall, but then Yo Gabba Gabba came and kind of put it on hold for a second, and now we're going back in the studio next week actually to finish up some more songs, and
So the Oh Gabba Gabba, it's really catchy. Where it came from, the origin of it.
the name.
Yeah, man.
Well, Gabba Gabba in Japan means like something that's big and baggy.
All the way from Japan.
Okay.
Like the word Gabba Gabba is a onomatopoeia, and it means like if something that like if you're a little kid and you put on your dad's pants, it would be like Gabba Gabba, with like flapping in the wind, like. And we wanted to find like some words that kids could say that was like early phonetic sounds, like mama, dada, gaga, bob. The kids want a bottle, they say baba. So we put a bunch of words together, and Gabba Gabba came out. And I thought from the Japanese connection, that was kind of interesting. Yeah. Gabba Gabba, Gabba Gabba. And then we put a yo on the front of it to make it more like in your face, magic.
Idea for my next album.
Yo Gabba Gabba. And we were looking for a magic word that little kids could say.
No, that's super cool. I like that. I didn't know the origins of that.
Excellent.
Yeah. So it's our own made up magic word, but it does have origins. And people said, what about the Ramones? Gabba Gabba Hey. And I'm like, that's even better. I love the Ramones.
Right. Yeah.
Yes,
any parting words, closing thoughts, Christian?
Yeah, no, just thanks for having me. It's great to talk. Obviously, I talked a lot, so.
No, this is.
No, man, wonderful.
We appreciate your time and your honesty.
No, I just say, for the people that are listening to ska and interested in the music, and just what it's all about is just positivity and connecting with people. Obviously the two-tone thing, it doesn't matter if you're black or white, but it's just us as human race. Like, we can come together and unite around like a cause and have a soundtrack to that. I mean, that's what living is all about. It's like learning how to come together, put aside our differences. And that's why music is so magic. And
Yes,
I'm so grateful that we're, 2 years ago, I would have said, hey, I don't know if we're ever going to play another show, with the COVID thing.
Hard time.
Who knows? It was crazy. And so going back out on the road, and we never know when, that rug is going to get pulled out from underneath you. So I would just say,
No, I think that's the end of it.
yeah, stay positive.
We won't have any more lockdown, no more pandemic.
Yeah. Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Let's
But
hope.
you definitely taught us all to not take things for granted, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Every day is a gift for sure.
Frankly, could deal with one more.
No, I know I couldn't either. Yeah. Well, Christian, thank you
Yes.
for everything. This has been a lot of fun, and we greatly appreciate your time and give our best to the rest of the guys in the group, and we will be on the lookout for Yo Gabba Gabba at some point.
Yeah, and hit me up about the show if you guys want to come to the Glass House. Like,
Yeah, no, we'll absolutely see you
No, I'm in.
at the show there. Yeah,
let's give high fives,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're promoting Glass House. Remind me the title.
Oh yeah,
Ska at the Glass House.
Summer of
So,
Ska series.
Yeah, the summer
Right.
series, right?
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
in addition to some, you haven't seen the flyer?
I think so. I think
Oh
so.
yeah, it's worth looking at. Yeah, we have some legends plus
Yeah,
bands from
there's a few legends
area.
coming there to the Glass
because I
House
think
as
the
well,
week
so.
after your show we have the Tenors, Montemar's
Monte-
Godfather, by some of LA's finest.
Yeah, and
Monty
Nesmith,
yeah,
and
yes.
Simmer, so yeah, it's a
And we
good.
just played with the Skatalites in February at
What?
House of Blues in Anaheim.
Oh,
We
that's
just
right.
played-
Right,
that's
yes,
right.
yes. I missed that one.
Yeah, good
and that
old-
was great. A little bit of a different lineup than the one I saw back in the 90s, but
Sure.
still great.
They're still keeping it. They're still keeping it going.
Yes,
So
yes,
yeah,
yes.
nice. Well, we will absolutely see you at one of the local shows, and again, Junior.
Yeah, for
Thank
me,
you.
more likely the Glass House.
Right. Indeed.
Please, any of them, anyone you want, just
For sure. And we want to thank everyone for the ongoing support. Please subscribe to this podcast series and our YouTube channel. Follow at History of LA Ska on Instagram and join our Facebook group. Please tell your friends and families and colleagues about this interview series. Follow this gentleman at Junor Francis.
And this series is produced by my good friend here, Eric Kohler, for Rockery Radio. That's at Rockery_radio. Once again, thanks for your support and support. What's that? In any event, thanks for supporting the
Nice.
local music scene.
I'm gonna do the same thing, and
Yes.
I want to thank our mutual friend Derek for helping line this up.
What's up, Derek?
And until next,
longtime friend, Derek
Yes.
Schaefer.
I'd be remiss not to remind the audience to support the legends when they are in town.
yes, and
At
get
all
out
times.
and support the local music scene as a whole
Yeah,
too. So,
we're losing the legend at an alarming rate.
There's nothing like the traditional real ska, man. It's the best.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah,
So,
man, people
nothing
died
but
for it.
respect.
People
True.
died making it what it is.
Right, indeed.
Believe it.
Take care, Junior. Thank you.
Yes,
All the best.
Thank you, guys. Great to meet you.
Yes, indeed. Likewise.
See you.